Your ship is more than a floating block of metal in Star Citizen, being comprised of several interconnected systems working together. Some of these are pretty obvious, like weapons and shields, whilst others work silently in the background to keep your ship functional. In this video, I'll be going over how each component works, what their statistics mean, and how they affect one another, so that you have the knowledge to go forth and spend your UEC wisely. I will be referencing Urkel.games and Hardpoint.io a lot through this video, which are fantastic fan-made tools and highly recommended. As a disclaimer, neither shows all the stats, so both are needed to get the full picture. This is going to be quite extensive, so the timeline has been split into sections for your convenience. And with that, grab your towel and welcome to A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Verse.
Quantum travel initiated.
Let's begin with how you interact with and change your ship's components. Open the mobi-glass by hitting the F1 key, then select the Ship Loadout tab, which is shown here. From the top right, you will find a drop-down list of every ship you currently have access to. I'm in the hangar module currently, and so I have access to all of my ships freely. However, if you're in the PU, do note that unless your ship is in storage, it will not be possible to change these components. This is indicated by a red padlock. Sometimes this bugs and your ship stays locked even after being placed into storage. This can be fixed with an insurance claim. Once you have selected your ship, you can see we have multiple options on the left side. In each tab there are two columns. The left column indicates the component currently fitted to the ship, and clicking it with the primary mouse button will populate the right side column with every component that you own that is compatible with that slot. To change one of these components, simply select the desired item from the right column. I will be skipping the MISC and paint tabs in this video. MISC lists all the missiles on your ship, which do not impact ship systems in any way. Likewise, paints do not affect your ship systems. Moving into propulsion, currently this only lists the quantum drives, which as their name suggests, are used to make use of quantum travel. There are a lot of things to consider with quantum drives, so maybe grab a cup of tea before watching this section. The first is speed, which can be measured in both kilometers per second as well as the speed of light c. 0.5 c then is 50% of the speed of light. Stage 1 acceleration is how quickly your ship accelerates during the initial section of quantum travel. That's between triggering QT by holding B, but before the blue warp field effect appears. Stage 2 acceleration is how quickly your ship accelerates to its maximum quantum travel speed once the blue warp field is activated. Fuel requirement is how much quantum fuel your drive burns per million kilometers travelled. Disconnect range is how far from your destination you will drop out of QT. Energy draw is how much power the quantum drive will pull from the power plant during quantum travel. Power draw request time is how long the drive takes to be fully operational after being turned off, either by the player or by an EMP strike. Calibration delay is not relevant, however calibration time is, but at this time it is not currently listed on Urkel or correctly on Hardpoint. As a general rule, calibration time is roughly equivalent to spool-up time, and is how long it takes the drive to calibrate upon aligning with the target. Calibration needs to be completed before quantum travel can be engaged. Spool-up time is the amount of time required once the quantum drive is engaged by pressing the B key before quantum travel can be initiated. This is independent of calibration. Cooldown time is how long the quantum drive needs to rest after dropping out of quantum before quantum travel can be initiated again. This is drastically reduced if you never go past stage 1, which happens usually between a planet and its moons. However, these figures are not listed as the value is oftentimes negligible. Interdiction time is not really relevant. Power to EM is how much the drive contributes to your EM signal, with IR being the IR contribution. The lower the figure, the closer you need to be to your target in order to ping on their radar. The two most important things here are speed and fuel requirements, and finding a balance that works for you. A faster drive typically means stopping to fuel more often, with the fastest drives sometimes being so thirsty you can't even make it across more than half the system. It is recommended that you play around on Urkel to find what works best for your ship, but my advice is always ensure that you can go from Olisar to Microtech in a single jump, as often this will be quicker than with 2 jumps and a refuel. The exception is if you intend to stay within a single planetary system, such as around Hurston, in which case, go with the fastest drive you can. Whilst on the subject of propulsion, I should also make mention of thrusters. Currently, these cannot be swapped out, however they do contribute to EM and IR radiation, as well as power and coolant draw. These figures are currently not displayed on Urkel, however the site does account for them. These values are visible on hardpoint.io, and vary dependent on whether the thrusters are firing or idle. Next is systems, which contain 3 categories at this time, being coolers, power plants, and shields. Looking at coolers first, these are responsible for taking the heat generated by your components and expelling it. Insufficient cooling will rapidly result in overheating components, making them one of the most important components on your ship. Regarding their statistics, the first is cooling rate, which is how many heat units per second the coolers are able to dissipate. The second is power draw request time, which is how long the coolers take to be fully operational after being turned on following a shutdown, either by the player or by EMP strike. Power to EM is how much they contribute to your EM signal, with IR being the IR contribution. The lower the figure, the closer you need to be to your target to ping on their radar. Currently not displayed on Urkel is the power draw of your coolers, however the site does account for it. Despite this, the value is negligible, so can be discounted. I should also address a common misconception, which is that draw request time is how long the coolers take to provide cooling to the components. This is not the case, as coolers always run at full cooling capacity at this time. Another thing to note is that all components have a fixed amount of cooling that they can receive. If your coolers are already providing more cooling than your components combined require, then upgrading them will not have any impact. As an example, my Avengers 2 bracers provide roughly 55% more cooling than my ship requires, so upgrading them to a higher level cooler will not increase the time that I can fire my weapons before they overheat. For that reason, at this time, it is not recommended that you upgrade your coolers unless Urkel or Hardpoint indicate that the other upgrades you have fitted will result in a higher heat output than your coolers can handle. Moving on to power plants, these are responsible for providing power to your ship's various components, and not having enough power will result in components shutting down, in favour of those with higher priority. Power draw is how many power units the plant can output per second. Power draw request time is how long the power plant takes to be fully operational after being turned on, following a shutdown either by the player or by EMP strike. Power to EM is how much the power plant contributes to your EM signal, with IR being the IR contribution. The lower the figure, the closer you need to be to your target to ping on their radar. Currently not displayed on Urkel is the cooling requirement of your power plants, however the site does account for it. The values are visible on hardpoint.io. A common misconception is that power plant draw request time is how long it takes the power plant to provide power upon a component requesting it. This is not the case, as power plants always run at full capacity at this time, unless the player manually reduces their output. Next is shield generators, which do exactly what it says on the tin. Much like quantum drives, these have a lot of statistics to consider, so maybe go make another cup of tea before watching this part. First is the shield's health per face, those being the fore, aft, port, and starboard. Put another way, it's how much damage each shield face must receive before being brought down. Next is regen, which is how many hit points per second the shield regenerates. Damaged regen delay is how long after receiving a hit a shield face begins to regenerate hit points, if the shield was not brought down. Downed regen delay then is how long a shield face takes to begin regenerating hit points after being taken down. Physical absorption is the minimum and maximum amount that the shield may reduce the damage of incoming ballistic rounds. Harden factor is how much additional hit points the shield face receives if it is hardened via the MFDs. This is a percentage value, so a 0.25 hardening factor translates to an additional 25% hit points on that shield face. Harden duration is the amount of time that the shield face remains hardened, with the harden cooldown being how long before you can harden the shield face again. Reallocation isn't pertinent as it's the same across the board, but it's how much of the shield's total health pool can be funneled away from 3 shield faces into the 4th final face. This is done by using the number pad on the right side of the keyboard. Reallocation rate is how quickly those hit points are funneled into a single shield face from others. Power draw request time is how long the shield generators take to be fully operational after being turned on following a shutdown, either by the player or by EMP strike, and should not be confused with shield regen rate. Power to EM is how much the shields contribute to your EM signal, with IR being the IR contribution. The lower the figure, the closer you need to be to your target to ping on their radar. Currently not displayed on Urkel is the power or coolant draw of your shields. However, the site does account for it. These values are visible on hardpoint.io, and vary depending on whether the shield is regenerating or in an idle state. The three main things to consider with shields is the health pool, the regen rate, and the regen delay. If you only have one shield, the overall consensus, with which I agree, is to use the FR66, 76, or 86 for sizes 1 through 3 respectively, as these have the best balance of the three aforementioned statistics. If you have more than one shield generator, then it is recommended that you mix the FR series with either the highest health pool shield available if your ship is slower, or the quickest regenerating shield if your ship is faster. Everyone's favourite components are, of course, the things that make the enemies go kablooey. The types of guns and missiles, as well as their explanations, is somewhat extensive and would alone near double the length of this video. Because of this, they will receive their own video at a later date. Addressing the statistics relevant here, power to EM is how much the weapons contribute to your EM signal, with IR being the IR contribution. This value changes dependent on whether you are firing the weapons or they are on standby. The lower the figure, the closer you need to be to your target to ping on their radar. Currently not displayed on Urkel is the power or coolant draw of your weapons, however the site does account for it. These values are visible on hardpoint.io, and vary dependent on the weapon's state. Related to weapons are components such as EMP generators and quantum snares. These currently cannot be swapped out, but have a substantial power and cooling draw and must be taken into account when planning your loadout of your ship if it includes them. At this time, neither Urkel nor Hardpoint list the power draw or cooling rate of such components, however they do account for them in their calculations, allowing for their values to be worked out. So now you understand what all the statistics mean, how do these all tie together when equipping your ship? First off, we would always recommend choosing the weapons, shields, and quantum drives you desire first, using Urkel or Hardpoint's loadout manager. When choosing these components, we would also recommend giving consideration to IR and EM signatures if you intend to fly with some level of stealth. Once you have determined those systems, you next need to address power. We would always recommend that you equip a power plant with at least 20% more capacity than required under the most extreme circumstances, that being weapons and thrusters firing, and shields recharging. The reason for 20% is to allow for overclocking headroom. For coolers, we advise equipping any which have at least enough capacity to cover the aforementioned extreme circumstances. However, additional headroom affords no benefits at this time. By default, both Urkel and Hardpoint do assume this most extreme scenario when calculating your heat and power requirements, allowing you to easily see what is needed. You will likely find that in many instances, your stock power plants and coolers exceed these requirements, and as such, do not require upgrading. If you do find that you have excess headroom and wish to reduce your radar footprint, there is of course no reason to not change out your coolers and power plants in order to do so. And that just about covers everything. Leave your comments below letting us know if there's anything that we missed, and let us know if there's anything else you'd like us to cover, both in Star Citizen and any other games. And with that, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.